You cannot publish anything we don't approve, and if you do, we'll strip you of your press credentials.
We hear it that way, and not only that, the Pentagon argues that if we put out information, and that we have to agree that we understand that putting out information, even unclassified information that they have not approved of, is a potential violation of national security and a breach of national security, which is something we can't agree to. That is agreeing that the release of information could pose a risk to national security. And so that is why you're seeing all of us band together. And I think it's a remarkable thing that every organization, nearly every organization, has come forward and said, we will not agree to this. And we're doing so because it goes against the principles of the First Amendment. Our responsibility is not to put out what the Pentagon wants us to put out, but to put out information that the American public needs to know about an organization that takes nearly $1 trillion of taxpayer dollars and has the awesome responsibility of potentially deploying America's sons and daughters into harm's way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, John Heilman, this is an organization that does get like $1 trillion. We all grew up with stories that were because of the press going in and finding out, well, what, $200 toilet seats, like, you know, $800 hammers. I mean, we've grown up around this. It's not just about boneheaded decisions made by Pete Hegseth. A lot of it has to do with one of the most just absolutely mind-boggling bureaucracies in Washington, D.C. I always tell people that, you know, now, what are the jobs that, you know, you just don't want in Washington, D.C.? And at the top of it, I say, you know what? The Pentagon. It is hard. You better have about 5 Sherpas before you go in there and try to learn how to run it, because it is so complex. They're constantly trying to hide the ball from you, and they're constantly trying to figure out how to protect their own fiefdoms. Well, that's against the Secretary of Defense in like every administration. And the idea that Pete Hegseth actually is calling off the watchdogs, calling off the free press. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what Pravda was like working under. I don't know what Putin's, I don't know what the RT's like working under Vladimir Putin. I don't know that anybody's going to get pushed off of an 8-story building, right? But at the same time, I've never heard of anything, even if it's not like that, I've never heard of anything like this before in American history.
I don't think anything exists like this before in American history, Joe. I can't think of anything, you know, of a roughly comparable example or parallel from the past. And look, there's a million things to say about this. That some of them have already been said just now, related to how deeply, profoundly antithetical this is to the values of the First Amendment, but also it kind of reflects a kind of fundamental misunderstanding of the relationship between journalists and government, and what our role is, and how government has, in some ways, even benefits from the discomfort that the press puts it in when it holds government accountable and honest. There's obviously the questions of transparency in times of war. There are a million things here. This is an attempt to institutionalize propaganda, and there's a lot of ways in which this administration. All administrations put out press releases and try to spin stories their way. This administration, in the age of social media, has probably the most sophisticated and most advanced kind of propagandistic capacities and skill set of any administration in history. But this is trying to kind of make that the institutional order of operations, right, where the only things that come out of reporters who cover the Pentagon are things that have already been approved by the Pentagon. But here's the thing that makes it even crazier, is it's going to be futile. It will not work, because anybody who covers, whether it's the White House or the Defense Department, knows the reporters are not going to stop digging for scoops and not going to stop holding the Pentagon's feet to the fire. He's not going to stop calling sources and looking for the $900 toilet seat or looking for the Pentagon papers. They're just going to do it from outside the building. And every reporter who covers it is going to be like, you know, this is a pain in the ass. I can't go to the Pentagon briefing anymore, and I can't sit with my sources in the Pentagon cafeteria, but I'm still going to talk to them. I'm going to talk to them off campus. I'm going to talk to them on chat. I'm going to talk to him on the phone. I'm going to talk to him on email. It's not going to work, apart from the fact that it's profoundly wrong. It's not going to have anything like the effect that Pete Hegseth thinks it's going to have.
Well, and there's another part of this, too, and that is Pete Hegseth trying to stop the president of the United States from getting information that may not reflect well on him. How many times, John Lemire, have we read throughout history the president of the United States reading the newspaper wherever he is and saying, wait, what's going on at the Pentagon? What's going on at the Treasury? What's going on? Closes the newspaper up and says, call the secretary over here, and we need to have a face-to-face. So this is in part also trying to keep Donald Trump in the dark, because if the media picks up something that's embarrassing for Pete Hegseth or picks up something that shows things going badly askew at the at the Pentagon, then the president will see that, and he will see that by watching, whether it's by watching Fox News or by reading the Wall Street Journal or the New York Post, wherever he gets his information. Our Morning Joe, he sees that, and then he picks up the phone and he says, hey, Mr. Secretary, come over to the White House. I just heard that you're doing such and such over there. I mean, damn, that's already happened. It happened at Signalgate. It happened with Hegseth doing things that the commander-in-chief didn't know he was doing. That has already happened this term, and Pete Hegseth got embarrassed in front of the president of the United States because the media did their job.
Yeah, at least part of this clearly born out of an insecurity from Pete Hegseth, who does not have all that many allies in the White House, but President Trump still fond of him. And we should know President Trump yesterday asked about this, and he gave it his approval, and also mused with the idea of potentially kicking the White House press corps, which, of course, the White House Correspondents Association represents, out of the building, saying they could perhaps do their job from across the street. That'd be significantly opposed, but we should also know President Trump, not one likely to completely turn down media attention, but the White House has already done a good job, from their perspective, of sort of hijacking the press pool and largely stocking it with friendly reporters. President rarely takes tough questions these days. Nancy, this is obviously an extraordinarily important moment here. Remind viewers, if you will, some of the stories, some of those key storylines that you and your colleagues in the Pentagon press are following that might be a little more challenging to do so now. And that's the end of the day. This isn't just going to punish the press. That's not the point. We'll still do our jobs. It's limiting what the public, what the American people can potentially find out.
Well, there are two major stories right now. The U.S. has conducted now 5 strikes, as you noticed earlier in the broadcast, on ships near Venezuela. We have yet to learn what kind of ordnance has been used, what kind of